I've been thinking about Steam Deck sales ever since it got released, and we still don't have any hard numbers, but I want to talk a little bit about what we do know, and I also want to talk about this article from The Verge, whose headline reads, "The Steam Deck is not a flop." And based on what I know so far, I agree. Let's get into it. What's good, Deck Gang? Shout out to Sean Hollister from The Verge, who's been writing about the Steam Deck and recently wrote about this topic, which inspired me to make this video. He wrote up these details over on The Verge's website. I'll leave a link in the description, so be sure to check it out. So, a couple weeks back, I reported that the Steam Deck had been selling well. We didn't have hard numbers, but what we knew at the time was that Steam Deck was in Steam's top sellers 3 weeks in a row. It was number 2 in that list behind Elden Ring each week. Well, since then, it repeated that on week 4, second only to LEGO Star Wars, and then in week 5, it took the top spot. There are a few things to keep in mind here, of course. First is that Steam top sellers list is based on revenue and not units. So every Steam Deck sold is like 6 to 10 copies of Elden Ring or LEGO Star Wars in terms of revenue. Second, we know that Steam Deck has really ramped up its shipments, but we don't know whether or not Elden Ring sales are starting to subside now after nearly 2 months of amazing sales on PC, not to mention pre-orders. So yeah, the Steam Deck now reaches the number 1 spot on the top sellers list, and here's the thing. I predict that it's going to be a while before we see it drop back to number 2 or lower. We don't have too many big games on the horizon, sure, but also Valve has committed to ramping up production and they've made good on that promise so far. They've been sending out emails on Thursdays in addition to Mondays, and a lot of my friends that were predicted to get theirs in late April have been able to order already. It seems like the 1 week margin of error on Moo's calculator was short-lived, and it's going to be harder to predict when you will be able to order your own unit beyond Valve's very broad ETA. The difficulty there is that there are multiple queues and each one is moving at a different pace. Each region and model have their own queue. There are 4 regions, US, Canada, EU, and the UK, and of course 3 models, so that's 12 queues. Most people are probably in the US 512 queue, and in that queue Valve has gotten through about 15 minutes worth of orders. Meaning, if you placed your reservation within the first 15 minutes, you probably had a chance to order already. My friend who was in the first 11 minutes just got his, for example. I have a 256 US friend who gets his this week and placed his order just shy of 20 minutes. On the other hand, someone commented on my video that they're in the UK 512 queue, they placed their reservation within 8 minutes, and somehow they have a Q3 ETA. So it's kind of all over the place, but it seems clear that we're still nowhere near the 110,000 reservations that were placed within the first 90 minutes. If I had to guess, we're somewhere between 30 and 40,000 units sold. Which raises a huge question. Is that a good amount of units sold in the first 5 weeks? A lot of that depends on your perspective. I think it's tremendous, and it's part of why Sean from The Verge said that Steam Deck is not a flop. But if you're used to console sales, you're used to seeing numbers in the millions, and maybe this looks relatively paltry to you. PS5 sold 2.5 million worldwide on the first day, for example. But this isn't a worldwide release, and this is Valve's biggest hardware launch yet. Demand is already outpacing supply. I imagine that Valve wanted to start slow for a number of reasons, not least of which they are not Sony, Microsoft, or Nintendo. This is their very first console, assuming you look at it like a console at all. All that being said, I think Valve is looking to increase production by another order of magnitude. That's based on the words from Lawrence Yang, who said they're looking to get 100,000 units sold by the second month. And that's a number that, even though it pales in comparison to consoles, it completely blows away anything that's similar to the Steam Deck. INEO and GPD devices typically have a couple thousand backers at launch. I think even flagship PCs land somewhere in the order of a few million, which I'm fairly certain the Deck will absolutely hit. And that's why the Steam Deck is not a flop. If you were worried that the Steam Deck would suffer the same fate as Steam machines or even the Steam controller and Steam Link, then you should feel a little more optimistic today, because Steam Deck is selling well, and even just the current demand in 4 regions should spell success for the Steam Deck. If Valve can stay on top of supply, who knows how many units they can sell. But what do you think? How many units sold would be a success for Valve? How many units would be a flop? Let me know in the comments. By the way, if you're liking this video, make sure to like the video. It helps YouTube know to share it with more people. If you like my Steam Deck news videos in general, then don't forget to subscribe as well. Another notable thing about this article from The Verge is that Sean Hollister had probably the most critical review of the Steam Deck at launch. It was honestly one of my favorite reviews, but here was the opening sentence, quote, "Both of these things are true. First, I'm having more fun with the Steam Deck than any gadget I've tested in years. Second, the Steam Deck is a mess. It's rushed, unfinished, buggy, and unstable. If Valve sold the console I've been playing at Best Buy or GameStop, people would return it in droves." End quote. Ouch, right? But I think it shows the strides that Valve has made since launch that Sean too is acknowledging that the Steam Deck experience is getting better with every week. Speaking of harsh reviews, I want to talk about the MKBHD review of the Steam Deck. First of all, MKBHD is awesome and I respect the hell out of him. But I was disappointed by his Steam Deck review video and I think the MKBHD team could have done a much better job with it. Steam Deck warrants many legitimate criticisms, but there were a number of inaccuracies, and look, I'm no stranger to unforced errors. I've had my share of inaccuracies on this channel, but these were some big ones, and the MKBHD network of channels has a whole team that could have addressed some of these when putting the video together. Most egregiously, he said that the 512GB version of the Steam Deck was not available yet, which, what? I know that this is not MKBHD's bread and butter, but I mean this video got 1 million views in a day and I just hate to think that one of the most watched Steam Deck videos got it this wrong. Obviously the 512GB version has been available from day one, so I'm not sure what prompted him to say that, but more importantly, I'm not sure why no one caught it before the video was published. Even if this isn't MKBHD's bread and butter, I know there is at least one person on that team that has some Steam Deck hype, and they should have had eyes and ears on that video. He also kind of bemoaned the 64GB model for its smaller and slower storage, but kind of glossed over how much microSD cards can make up for that. I mean, he mentioned it for sure, but he didn't go into detail about how you can easily hot swap the SD cards and how fast load speeds are from those SD cards. In passing, he also said that half the games don't work yet, and while I think this is a very tricky subject, I hate this phrasing. I would argue that over 70% of games on Steam Deck work, but it's possible I'm being too generous here. Now, this video was made a while ago. In it, he says that Apex Legends wasn't verified and there's a correction, but even that correction is old because it says Apex Legends was verified today. Apex Legends got verified over a month ago, so this video was sitting in the vault for over a month. Why do you think that would be? Well, the answer is easy actually. This video is the first time we got to see the D-brand skin on a Steam Deck, and those skins were only announced recently. I think this video was held to be published until D-brand was ready to announce the skins, and that's part of my problem with it. The sponsorship is dope, and I know you gotta get to the bag, don't get me wrong, but it feels like this review was more of a business obligation than a true review, and that's more than a little disappointing for a channel that I hold in very high esteem. Speaking of business obligations and getting to the bag, a few of you have asked about this thing. It's the D2 Pixel Art Bluetooth speaker from Devoom. They sent one over to me and I'm really digging it so far. You can use their app to make your own pixel art creations or pick ones that other people have made. I made this little Steam Deck logo thing. I think it's cool. I use it more as a desktop decoration, but it doubles as a Bluetooth speaker and it even has some games on it like Arkanoid. Oh, it's also kind of a fidget toy because how can you not press on these keys all day? Anyway, if you're interested, I have a link for 10% off down in the description, so check it out. Alright, it's that time again. Add these to your wish list, the segment where I tell you about some newly released or evaluated games for the Steam Deck. Today's feature is Forgive Me Father. This retro-inspired shooter does a great job at setting a mood. The eldritch horror theme is represented not only in the game's atmosphere, but also the gameplay. You hold a lantern to peer through the darkness, but you can't hold the lantern and your weapon at the same time. There's a madness meter that powers your special skills, one of which is apparently the ability to smoke a fat blunt and subsequently conjure a health-leeching fire sword out of thin air. I mean, pretty metal, right? The madness meter doesn't have a negative effect, but there are other mechanics in Forgive Me Father that blight you with effects that feel like you're losing your sanity. Overall, I'm really digging this shooter both in challenge and in atmosphere. I used a slightly modified version of the gamepad with gyro template, and I don't see any reason why this won't be deck verified. Do you like Mario 64? Okay, then consider Demon Turf Neon Splash. This is a standalone DLC to Demon Turf which came out half a year ago in November. I actually never played that game, but at $5 I figured I'd pick up this continuation, and I was pleasantly surprised. Like Mario 64, this game has a lot of moves. You can utilize a dash, a roll, and different styles of jumps to maneuver the open level design to find hidden items as well as to speedrun to the end for a gold medal. There's lots of challenge to be had, which is absolutely my style of platformer. I also really like the funky soundtrack and art style. My only complaint was the camera, which sometimes gets in the way of proper wall jumping, but overall it's fun and plays great on deck. Jet Lancer recently got deck verified, and I wanted to take a few moments to talk about it. Some of you may be familiar with loot browsers, and this takes that 2D dogfighting concept to a whole new magnitude. There are distinct levels with unique goals in a hub world, and each of those levels are graded. Getting an S+ on each is a tough but fulfilling endeavor if you're a fan of the gameplay. That gameplay, at its best, is white knuckle and balletic as you outmaneuver and outclass your opponents to either destroy them or to accomplish some other goal. And best of all, the bosses. They're bombastic and fantastical in the best way. The whole thing gives a feel of a late 90s arcade to PlayStation port, and I am so here for it. Biota is an action platforming Metroidvania with a 4-color palette. There are palette swaps and they pretty much all look great. You can select from a few characters, each with their own weapon and distinct feel, and the feel is the main thing I love about this game. The controls they feel so damn good. If you're looking for a pure Metroidvania, well, this game has somewhat limited backtracking, but if you're a fan of run and gun gameplay like Mega Man, Biota has you covered. It plays great on deck so far, despite not yet being evaluated. Admittedly, I haven't played Abyss yet, but I just had to show it off here. This destructible physics puzzle game looks dope. It reminds me of Red Faction Guerrilla, where you had to utilize destruction to chaotically solve puzzles. Abyss just entered early access, but appears to have a solid amount of new content with 35 levels so far. The explosions really sold me on it, and I can't wait to dig in. Now, like I said, I haven't played it yet, so I can't say how it plays on deck, but from what I understand, it runs well in Proton, and it has a mode for potato computers, so Steam Deck should do more than fine with this game. So that's going to do it for today, but be sure to check out my last video where I try to persuade you that EA Play is good actually. Alright, Deck Gang out. Goodbye!